I wanted to say that last Monday we had a wonderful time sort of starting to talk about the workshop and what we would have done differently and how things were. And then we were talking about what to take out of the video. And then we had the idea of, instead of taking anything out, of just adding in things.
What were we going to take out? I don't remember.
Well, this is a good place to begin. There were actually four things, but I remember first when I had said philosophy is theory about
I didn't
theory.
want to have said yes.
And you said yes.
Even though it's half right or more.
Right. So now you can say what is the half that isn't right.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, a theory is a group of concepts. And philosophy is a way of undercutting, criticizing, examining the assumptions that are inherent in any concept. So if philosophy were a theory about theory, there wouldn't be any reason why the theory about theory is any more right or any more interesting than the theory.
That.
See?
Yes.
So it's not a theory exactly. And then each approach in philosophy has some way of handling that. At first you would say, well, that's impossible. You're going to have concepts, and therefore they are about concepts, but they really know better than the concepts that they examine. They have their own assumptions, and then there doesn't seem to be any way out of that. And some philosophy will say that there's no way out of that. And then, of course, there are ways out of that. So that was why I didn't just flatly want to have said yes, even though your point was very good. You were trying to say it's one level more.
Yes, one level more abstract.
Right. It's about theory rather than being theory.
Well, that actually leads to Susan's question.
What was Susan's question?
Susan's question was, how is...
And when did it come up first, Susan's question?
It came up Thursday.
Okay.
After the...
Right.
When we were discussing the workshop. And I had given people the Beyond Postmodernism paper. And her question was, why is saying that sensing rather than perception could be attacked in the same way that perception could be attacked?
Sure.
And she was saying, well, what makes it different?
Right.
And I was saying, now this is very good because you can tell me what I was how I wasn't understanding it correctly. I was saying that it's about that philosophy is a strategy of thinking, a path of thinking,
yes.
And that each philosophy starts in a certain place and follows that through, and that when you're starting with an organismic experiencing that is felt, that will lead to a different place than starting with thinking or starting with perception or starting with an idea.
Yes.
And she was saying, well, why is that more right than...
Well, it's a way... So I want to say, if I have something to add or to change about what you said,
Yes,
it's still
good.
Generally very helpful to have you say what you say, and then come in. And
Yes,
in fact,
yes,
there's a
yes,
kind of
good.
two-step process, which is quite nice. So this is like that too. The word sense has so many different meanings that when we say a felt sense, then it can sound like it's a sense of some object. But there's a whole complexity with that. So now I'm going to come back to that. First, go with what you were saying. Say, with a felt sense, one has one's concepts already related to what one is, sort of. And I'm saying if you look in there, you discover that whatever else you are, because I don't want to make final statements about what anybody is, but whatever else you are interaction already always with something. And then to form a felt sense, to actually have a felt sense come, that's a lot more like perception than you already are, because you already are in interaction. But then to have a felt sense form, then you say, oh, that. And the that is a kind of datum that she would be half right about, saying, well, isn't that also like perception? And then there is this huge difference that you were pointing to, because the five senses give you a percept that's over there and omit you, because it gives you something over there that's supposedly over there without you, and of course it isn't. And where is over there? Well, it's there from here. And space isn't just created by God on the first day or something. Space is the over there from here. So that in science they talk about an idealized observer, and they, by that trick, try to get rid of the problem that there really isn't a percept thing over there without you. And then we have all kinds of very interesting research even now to show that an infant, a newborn infant, can connect the visual with the auditory, even though the connections between visual and auditory neurologically don't come in for a few months. You show in newborn, the second day, a nipple. Well, actually, you start by putting a nipple in the mouth that has a funny shape to it, like it has little sticks sticking out or something. And then you present the infant 3 or 4 different shaped nipples, among them the one that was in the mouth. And then the infant will tell you, and it's really interesting how an infant can tell you something. The newborn infant will tell you which nipple he likes better.
Really?
And it'll be the one that was in his mouth.
Huh, that's very interesting.
The way you do it, of course, is that the infant is sucking on a bottle of milk, and you fix it so that what you're showing are pictures which disappear if the infant stops sucking, and which stay there as long as the infant is sucking. So when you regularly find that the infant keeps having the picture come back of the nipple that was in its mouth.
You mean that the infant is learning?
It doesn't have to learn. It just keeps wanting that picture back. It just keeps sucking that picture back.
Wow.
And not sucking the other pictures back. And so it's been discovered that in spite of neurology, the infant can recognize what nipple was in its mouth. And what does that show? It shows that the external perceptions of vision and touch come into something
That already
that is already more than that, so that the infant only later will connect vision with touch, but is right now living an interaction process in which the visual things come into it and the touch things come into it.
It's very interesting.
So I would say you were perfectly right to make the big difference be that the external 5 senses give you a world that's over there in empty space. Supposedly that is a primitive way that things exist. But actually they can't exist like that, because they only exist as perceived or as observed. Whereas a felt sense comes from the being that you already are, the interaction that you already are. Even though once it really forms and you say, oh, that's what I mean, or that's what I want to say, or that funny feeling, or that, then it is somewhat like a percept. And you could make the same mistake with it. You could say, oh, all right, so reality
That's over
consists of
there.
percepts over there. And you could say over there is inside or something, and you could make out like there's some kind of space in which things exist. But that space is similarly created by your
Right.
referring to it. So you
So-
have to be interested in how it comes, how it forms, so that you don't assume that everything exists in some empty space out there or inside.
Susan wanted to know another way of saying what a different kind of concept is. So maybe we could say
Yes,
that
sure.
that finding a way of having a concept that doesn't separate oneself out and have
That's right.
what you're looking at over there is a different kind of concept
Right,
that
right.
adds you into
That's
the
right.
mix.
Right, and there are two ways of doing that. One is to have your concept and also keep with it what the concept is doing, how the concept is explicating you, so that you don't only have the concept, you also have the implicit intent or the implicit beingness of the thing that the concept is trying to articulate. Or another way of saying it is, you can't explicate in the sense of making experience be simply a concept. It's never going to be equivalent to a concept. A concept is something else. But if you take the felt sense that you're trying to say with you, that's one way of using concepts in such a way that they don't lose the living interaction that you always are speaking from, making concepts from. If you take that with you, you can always go back in there and say, now what did I mean? Did that concept do what I wanted it to do?
So there are two things there. There's one thing
The one
that
thing is taking the implicit experiencing with you all the time, thinking
of
with it.
always coming back to the
Always
feel of
coming
something.
back to the feel of that and thinking with the feel of that. And the other way is the process model. It's to make concepts have internal to the conceptual structure, to have it be implying and occurring, or to have it be implicit and explicit, to have your concept have an implying or a forward moving like life has. Life is self-organizing. Life implies its next step. So if you have a concept like, and there could be many different kinds, but one way is how I did it. Nobody's doing that yet. As soon as people start to see what I did, they'll do it better. My concept was occurring and implying. So I started there by saying that every occurring has an implying further. And then when that next thing happens, it changes the implying. So that everything doesn't happen at once. When something happens, the forward implying is changed by the happening. So now you have a new implying, which makes a further step, which makes a new implying, which makes a further step. So here's a kind of concept that's different from the just over there clunk. It's not just an is. It's an is always implies. So then the next is implies.
I
And
remember-
each implying is changed by what happens.
I remember when you said that what it is equals how it functions, and that had been very helpful to me. That
You're right, that's the same,
the same
similar
idea.
kind of concept.
Yes.
Now, that's nice. Now it helps me say what I mean by kind of concept. Because what you said is something different than what I said. But it's the same kind of concept.
Yes, it
Rather
felt
than-
related.
Yes.
It felt
Yes.
related to
Yes.
me.
Most of the concepts that we were taught, maybe all of them, are just is concepts. Clunk. It's over there. And then somebody has to come and make time go so that you get something else over there. And we haven't got the kind of thing that living things are that make their own next. Because modern science doesn't get its concepts from living things. Like, we know more about living things than was ever known in the whole history of the world. We have every species examined and every living thing analyzed and every cell in this enormous amount, but no basic kinds of concepts are allowed to be made from what living things are like. They're supposed to exist as inanimate things, as chemicals,
Yes,
or
very,
as
very different.
boxes, so that the universe is basically dead, and what explains living things are dead things. And I don't think that's right. If you put it, if you make the assumption blatant, then I don't think anybody would really agree with it. Then it
I
would
think many people are trying very hard to find ways of thinking without
yes,
thingifying.
yes, exactly.
And it's
exactly.
very difficult to think
Well,
without
you need
thingifying.
sharp concepts. If you're just going to make everything fuzzy, then we don't have electric lights, and we don't have videotapes, and we don't have transportation, and 6 billion people couldn't live on this planet without this kind of science that I'm. So I want to be clear, I'm not insane. I'm not rejecting science. We can't do without it. I'm rejecting only the assumption that this is the only kind of concept we can have.
Well, also the
And
only kind of the only kind of science, because science
yes,
is
of course,
also
not the only kind of science we can have. And we already have an alternative, that's ecology.
Yes.
But the alternative there is just holisticness. It's like everything is all one system, and don't mess with this because it'll relate to something else, all of which is very valid.
Yes, very
But
important.
it doesn't give you specific kinds of concepts, which is what I'm trying to do, which is what we need. And also the specific kinds of concepts that can relate to the concepts that we have. Now I've said too much, go on.
And maybe we could go on to the next thing that we were going to take out. And that
we're
was
still taking things out. Go ahead.
yes, we
What was
have
that?
right. We have. You had said to me, I was very intrigued. You had said to me that you thought ahead of time of bringing something in about the infinite, and
Yes.
that you deliberately did.
And I did that where
and
it fit
you
in.
wondered how
Right.
people
Right.
responded and how
Right.
it seemed.
Right.
And
Right. I only had a moment for it, but there was a moment where it fit.
yes, do
And
you
I
remember
said-
what you said?
Yeah, I said something about, I like what I said. I was only worried later whether it could be misunderstood, because I know how it is sometimes misunderstood. I like to say that, to me, it's obvious that we human beings live on the edge of an unknown there. And we don't know how we came here, and we don't know where we're going, and we don't know what it's all about. And there's very little that we know, and we live in this little known island here where we know our way around. And that's fine, but it's perfectly obvious that there is something further that we don't know. And you know, that you could go out on the street and get run over tonight and you wouldn't get home, you know.
And you wouldn't know what that
you
was.
wouldn't know what hit you, literally.
You wouldn't know what it was to.
Or whatever.
Yes.
Right? And then we don't know after that. Some people tell us you would be able to watch what hit you, and maybe so, I don't know. All I know is that it is human to live on this windy edge. And that's just what I said, I think, and I like that. But the misunderstanding that sometimes happens to me is that people think I'm saying a kind of agnosticism, like that we don't know. And of course I am saying we don't know.
But it's a different kind of we
it's
don't
a
know.
different kind of I don't know, and that's what I wish I had emphasized for a minute, to say we don't know about this edge, but we are it. And so we're thickly sitting here being
this
on this edge.
Yes.
And so while we don't know what we don't know, we have a big thing there, not a mere gap or a mere nothing.
This
Right?
isn't just an absence of something,
Is it?
or a
Exactly.
gap.
Thank you. Exactly.
But do you remember how you put it?
I said, I think, that I don't like it when that fact, when that that big cosmic thing is used in some way to make people small, to become falsely reverent, sort of. I mean, some type of reverence is due, but not the kind that makes us small, and like, and that's why, you know, I shock some of the
Well,
people that I say this to when I say or whatever the fuck it all is.
right, whatever the fuck it is, yes, yes. I think that's when we got the idea of taping, because you said, well, tell Charlotte to take the fuck out. And, and I
Well,
said, maybe instead of taking it out,
Let's
wouldn't it
say
be
more about it. Right?
Yes,
right.
yes. So I brought it up to the group.
Yes. Oh,
And,
good. What did they say?
Well, they said first they hadn't remembered you're bringing in the infinite, and I reminded them, and they said, "Oh, well, we really remembered his cursing." we were very,
So you see,
but we didn't remember what he cursed about.
I wiped it out with that word.
It was very liberating, actually. I remember particularly Ruth. There was just
Yes.
a lot of laughing, a lot of liberation.
Oh yeah, I think that's always true in formal situations. If you say "fuck it," freeze it up.
Mm-hmm.
But I wiped out what I said with it, apparently.
No, but in the discussion afterwards, it was liberating, I think, in the way that you made it to be liberating.
Yes.
In taking out the reverence that makes you feel so small.
I think, yes, I think that got across. Because even if they weren't paying attention to my saying that, the very word takes it out. Right?
Right, and in the discussion with all of us, we were able to explore
Oh,
that.
when I
In the
wasn't there.
discussion with all of us,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Releasing.
But now you've taught me another pitfall of this, which is that the word "fuck" is like, it's like that big gong that they used to have in the movie. You go
That's right.
"Bwang," and everything disappears.
Right. That's right.
What did he say?
That's right. But then bringing it back, people had very interesting ideas about why you used the fuck.
Yeah.
Somebody said, well, religious language is so oppressive that he wanted to make sure that whatever he said was not religious. Somebody else said,
Well, let me come in and say how I meant
yes.
that. I think once you can shake the false reverence, then the religious language becomes accessible again. Because it doesn't box you in.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is, you know, a few thousand years worth of things about all this, which are, some of them are very valuable. So I would have liked it to have the opposite effect. Now that you call it whatever the fuck it is, now we can use the religious language again.
The group
And
decided.
I know you know that I think that.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. The group decided that could be the term, so we kept saying the whatever the fuck it is.
Yes,
and that
that's
has
right.
become a new
That's right.
religious term.
Well, I think it is sort of like,
a new term.
well, it's sort of, it's a term about the terms that we would use there.
Yes.
And therefore it can be used as a term. Now, it would be nice if I had a term like that without the J. Arthur Rank gong effect. And maybe I could use fuck in some other context.
To liberate people.
Yes, and have this be, well, sometimes I'm polite and I say whatever the hell it is. Isn't that better?
Oh.
The word hell no longer
Yeah, it doesn't have that
this punch to
sting
it.
anymore.
Right.
But then maybe people might not have remembered.
The
We'll
whole-
have to go back
We'll
and,
have to
and
figure this out.
ask
Anyway,
them
this is a fun
about
problem.
this. Yes, yes, yes. Someone in the group said, well, maybe Jean was uncomfortable talking about this dimension of life and uncomfortable about going there. And I thought that was an interesting,
Yeah, yeah.
I had said, well, this is very
Well, it is-
important to Jean.
It's correct. It is very important to me, and I deliberately,
something.
right. But it is true if somebody picks up a discomfort that I do have a for years and years I've said, on that I have nothing to sell. I would say I'm a customer. I'm in the market for things about this to buy, but I'm not a, if nobody were doing it, then I might have to talk a lot about it. But since there's so many people already doing that, I don't have to do that. And I feel more comfortable using the word the way that person must have meant. I feel more comfortable when I'm doing that than when I'm setting myself up to be a speaker about that. And yet I realized recently that I have to say that.
Yes.
That much I have to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it not true that you're saying more about it in your writings about Aristotle?
Well, I don't say more about it when I write about Aristotle. I haven't yet written about Aristotle from my own point of view. I will. But mostly what I've written about Aristotle is Aristotle. He's perfectly comfortable. He knows all about God. And then when you look carefully at how he knows about God, it's very interesting, because he really only knows about God by proportion from us. It's bound to be at least what we are, only better. And the only difference is this little phrase, only better. So he really knows nothing about God. All he knows is that there's more.
That it must be
And
bigger.
it must be at least like us. No, not even, better. So yeah, I could talk about it
that way.
that way. Sure.
I always liked that idea that
I could talk about it anywhere. I like to talk about it. I just don't like to talk about it as a public, know better type of person. Like, there's so many things that I really know better than most people. Why do I have to talk about something I can't possibly know better than anybody else?
Oh, maybe that's what
You see,
has a special
what kind of
quality.
reverse hubris this is.
Well, I have actually gotten a lot from you about this subject.
That subject?
Yes.
You were always rich on that subject.
Well,
What did you get from me? Oh, some ploy about how to talk about it?
well,
I haven't experienced you getting something from me on
yes,
that subject.
I have gotten. It might be difficult to articulate at the moment, but I have gotten a lot from you about that subject, because I think that there's something about your struggle with it that's like my struggle with it, and you're talking about it indirectly rather than directly. My experience is that there's a spirituality, in quotes, a fucking spirituality, permeating everything in your
absolutely.
philosophy.
Oh, in that sense, yes, sure. Oh, yeah.
And there's something about it permeating the philosophy.
Oh, sure, of course. But it's from experience up, so that you always know, I don't know, I think, I always know what I'm saying. You always know what you're reading. It comes from what you already have up. I don't like it when I'm supposed to climb up to it and pretend that I'm there, and then from there look down.
Yes, but I guess that's what I've got. That has resonated very much with my way, which is that God, or whatever that is in us, in nature, and not up here.
Or not only up there. I don't know anything about up there. Maybe
it's
who
up
knows
there
how
too.
far it goes.
Up and down and all
Yeah,
around.
whatever the hell is over there, it goes on, presumably. But yeah, right. Well, there's more to it. I mean, what you're keying off is more than I can say now. It's like, yeah, you're perfectly right. I'm not in any way shy about that aspect because it's right here.
Well, I want to mark your saying that.
But
that
when
you're
I
not
have
at
to
all
make an
shy
entity
about
out of
that.
it and call it God or something, then I like to talk about God where people understand that I don't know what I'm talking about, neither do they, and yet we're in the middle of it. So it's not like we don't have anything to talk from, but it's only a thing to talk from. It's not a thing to talk about. You know, like this chair, you can walk around it and look at it from all sides. And an idea that I have, I can examine and I can see what it came out of and what it goes into and what difference it makes. I
But isn't the from and the about, the zigzag,
yeah, those are really
that can come
yeah. If
about
that's
this
what,
subject too,
yeah.
right?
Sure,
We can talk from it and then about it and then from it.
absolutely, absolutely. And where I have somebody who knows that, I'm fine. I like the old vocabulary.
I
Right.
told the group about your
There's
the
a whole
woman.
project now about. Go ahead. What did you tell them?
I told them about the nuns group saying, "Oh, you're talking about the mystical body of Christ,"
yeah,
and you're
sure.
saying, "Oh, yes,
Absolutely.
that's
Took
just what
me
I'm talking
a
about."
few seconds, and my only doubt was, what is it appropriate for a Jew to answer that question in this room? And I decided, fine, I can anyway. But I didn't have any doubt that that's another way to talk about all that.
I think that the group really enjoyed that, and we've referred back to it. And that would be another term, the mystical body of Christ.
Yes, sure. Why not?
Yes.
Right.
I guess we're ready to go on to the third
Go on. Oh,
subject.
the third. Go ahead.
The third one is about the demonstration. We wanted to add in some discussion about the relationality of the demonstration, and
How you
I
would
had-
have done something different there.
yes, and
Yes.
Joan had asked you, well,
Yes.
would you make it more relational? Joan was saying that she experienced something needed there,
Yes.
and you had asked me if I would have done it
Right.
differently or how I would have
Right.
done it.
Right. And you
And
would
I
have.
had said that when she looked at you and she said, I something like, I wish the answer could come from you, or I want the answer to come from you. And you stayed with the wish for the answer, and I would have picked up on
Right.
the from me part.
Right.
And then you and I had a very interesting discussion
Yes,
about,
yes.
was that
And
longing in there? And then we had maybe 4 kinds of in there. I don't know if I don't think we spelled them all out, but something
I
about,
remember that it could. Well, let me bring up the other
Yes.
point in the other
Yes.
point in it was when she said, "I'm just feeling the effect of being understood,"
yes,
and we were
yes.
talking about both spots as possibly my not being relational enough in them. The spot where she said, "I wish you could give me the answer," and the spot where different
Yes,
time
yes, yes.
where she said, "Oh, I'm just feeling."
Yes, I'm
being
feeling how you,
understood.
yes.
And then that variety that you were saying.
But I don't want to say relational enough, because we're all different.
Well, I
and
felt
that
very
you could
relational both times, so you're right. We should say to make it
differently.
overt. No, I feel we're talking about whether to have said some sentences there with you and me in them is what you
We're
meant.
talking
and,
about explicating.
and Joan meant, yes.
Yes.
And we were talking about whether she specifically, or a person, specifically has a specific relational desire there. I want you to tell me the answer. Or whether she was only saying, I wish somebody, but you're the only person here who could give me the answer. And then we had further steps in that,
Yes.
which you would, if you had done what you would do, she would have gotten into those further things, whatever they might be. Things about it's so lonely to have to find my own way all the time, or conversely, if you told me what to do, I wouldn't do it, or who knows what all kind of stuff people have, everybody uniquely different under there, right? Or I wish there were answers, or I don't even know if there is a right thing to do. Who knows what people have under there, right? And so I was trying to make a distinction between something that's really there already. She's saying to herself, you, I need you, or I need somebody to give me an answer.
Yes, we were wondering.
And the further things there. And I make a distinction there because if I feel it present, then I want to make sentences about it.
Yes, and that's a very complicated and important and interesting spot there.
Like if she had said, oh, I see you're not going to give me an answer, I would have responded to that. I would have said, oh, you realize that you were expecting a help that looks like I can't give, or something of that kind. Or if she had said something with that implication in the voice, even without the words.
And then we were talking about how, for me, that was in her posture and her eyes. And for you, it wasn't. And there's something there about the sensibility that I bring.
Right.
Then
Right. That's right. We made that
out.
distinction too.
Yes.
There is a zone where it's not possible to say absolutely this was there or it wasn't there. Had you been the person, it would have been there. Not because you brought it out, but because it was close enough so that you being you, had you attended to it, it would have turned out to have been there, retroactively true.
Well, maybe
there.
both ways. One way to say it would be that it's. Well, let me step back even further.
Okay.
What we had said
Okay.
was that it's there. It could be there in many ways. One way is that longing is there in all of us.
And therefore
deep
something
down.
some complexity is under it.
Is there?
Yeah,
Yes.
no question.
So that's one way it would
Right.
be there. Another way that it would be there is that that we aren't isolated minds that are separate from each other, and so if I'm bringing that, then that's in the intersubjective field, or the connection, or the interaction.
Well, that I would argue with. I wouldn't argue with the intent, but I would say that she and I were already interactioning. We were already in an interactional field. This was already happening.
Oh, yes, I'm
The
saying
issue
that
is,
too.
and she was in front of, having done a lot of work, she was in front of this blank. Now what do I do? But it isn't a blank. It's just the answer is not there. But she had everything she had said with her, and she was recognizing that now she doesn't have the next step. So for me to interrupt that and drag her off into some other subject matter, namely a discussion of how she and I are related, isn't what I would want, isn't what you intend either.
I want to go back to the question of the in there. Was it in there?
Was it in there, yes.
Was it in there?
Yes.
That's sort of our question.
Yes.
And the different
And we agreed that there are
ways.
many kinds of in there.
There are many kinds of in there. And I think I had said last time when we were talking that I would have said perhaps at that moment, you wish that I would help with this, or
Right.
you wish this would come, or it should come from me.
Right.
And you had said that would be good
Yeah.
to say. and it isn't that one would be better than another, but that that we're trying to understand the in there and the where the person is. And my sense of it is that there's so much in the implicit that we can lift out different aspects of experience,
Sure.
and that the in there that we're most interested in is the in there that carries forward where the person then feels that she wants to go, so that it was, right, the new was. I love that
Right.
concept of the new was. So if I said that and she said, oh yes, I was longing for
Right.
you or someone,
Right.
and maybe she hadn't been aware of that, maybe it was deep
Right.
down,
Right.
but that feeling of, oh yes, I was, would be the in there that we're most interested in, is the
Well, that
sense
you're
of
most interested
that
in.
I'm most interested in, the
Because
sense
I'm
of
not
the carrying
necessarily.
forward.
Well, I think you said, which I would agree with, that there would be many ways to carry forward any
Yes.
particular in there,
Yes,
so-called.
exactly.
So that you being you
Mm-hmm.
want to carry forward what is most important to you,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't just to carry it forward, but this relational dimension which is so central to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Did I say it back okay? Because that far I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
But then I want to make a distinction between
Mm-hmm.
the relational, which is being carried forward, in the very fact that I'm there, that I feel every minute with her, that she can feel me there,
Mm-hmm.
that she's laying out what she's saying to me,
Mm-hmm.
that she can feel me receiving it, that when I
Mhm.
get it wrong, she can feel that and correct it, so that we are very much together relationally.
Mm-hmm.
So that for me, different from you now,
Mm-hmm.
the issue I hear is, should that be what we next talk about, or what we do next
Mm.
from this moment?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I don't feel very often when relational therapists do that anyway.
That they make.
They make the next topic be a reflection upon the relationship that's happening anyway. To me, it's the relationship that's happening anyway that heals people.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about it may or may not do anything. So when there is a hiatus in the relation that's really happening, then we must talk about it. And then for me that takes precedence. I say, well, now you're mad at me, or now you're annoyed at me, or whatever. Or now it seems like I didn't understand you, or whatever. Takes precedence to anything else, because then the healing process is not happening when the relationship isn't happening.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's happening, and in the context of relating, she's standing in front of a problem, then I want to leave her there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I would say I want to leave us there,
Mm-hmm.
because we're already stuck now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yet we have all these strands that have come there,
Mm-hmm.
about who it was and all these things. And so having done all this work to bring all these things together here now, and now I don't know what the answer is, that's not when I want to talk about her and me.
Mm.
Am I communicating my sense of it?
Yes.
That's when I want to keep her company so she can stay there.
Yes, yes, yes.
So that the next step, the body can produce the next step.
Yes.
Or we can produce the next step
Yes.
by being together here.
Yes.
And so the other way around, if she were to say, I'm uncomfortable, I don't know what to say, then I would say, oh, well, you're here and I'm here and this problem is here, and at least I feel like we don't have to say anything. Again, I wouldn't say, you're uncomfortable about not saying anything to me, or you're uncomfortable to keep me waiting.
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think it's a relational issue. I think it's just that it's very hard to stay with a
So now,
with a place like that. And yet all the work we've done is precisely to find a step at this point.
right.
So it would be like, climbing a mountain and at the last moment deciding to watch a film of the mountain. It's like, we got all the way here, now let's see what the body,
But I think
what
it's
we
so-
will find here.
It's so interesting because my
but you
sense
understand
of it,
that
I understand what
if I
you're
saw
saying.
the thing
very,
again, I might agree with you. I might say, oh, I really didn't pick up that she meant, oh, you should. Or that there
Yes.
was some kind of, oh, you're just like my father, you don't tell me anything. He never had an opinion about anything. That it was really there. I might
Yes.
have picked it up.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
I'm not arguing that I have to be right about that moment.
Yes,
I'm
yes,
just saying
yes.
how I felt
Yes.
and how I do feel at such a juncture. I wouldn't at such a juncture say, now you and me.
And it seems right for me to say that my sense of it was very different.
Yes, yes.
And we don't
yeah.
know,
Yes,
there is no
yeah.
right and wrong
There I would
about
say,
it.
largely, if I had your sense, I would.
My
probably
sense of
go
it
with it.
was that there was an underneath struggle in which I felt she was trying to get from you something.
So that's a
That-
question.
Yes, we don't know that this is right at all.
We'll take
but
a look and see, do you being you,
Yes.
do you see this much more often because you're sensitive to it, or because that's your sense of the therapy anyway? I didn't say it back right. You made a beautiful distinction earlier when you said, me being me, I may retroactively create something that was there. And that's one legitimate thing.
Yes, yes.
Or it really was there in the sense that I should have seen it, only, nobody can see everything. But which one do you mean?
I mean that, well, I'm not sure I can make a distinction between those
Right,
two. We would
right.
have to watch the
I agree.
video again.
Conceptually, there's a distinction, but whether we can...
we can't separate
might not be able to.
ourselves from ourselves that way. You
Right,
know.
right. Well, we could watch it, and if you went away with yours and I with mine, then we would know it was to to us.
But let me say how it was
Yeah.
to me. That what I sensed was her persisting in an underneath way,
Well, again,
and then finally making it explicit
I didn't see that.
she wanted something from you, and
not just because that would be nice or
right.
convenient, but
that she
yeah.
wanted.
Well,
that
if you saw that
that-
before that moment, I would like to have seen that.
and that she wanted it from you, but that she needed something, in my sense, from you to allow that to be explicit. And so
Yeah.
that for me, I want you to go back to say what you didn't say when the camera was off, because I think that your sense of therapy is a little bit different from mine, a slightly different
Yes.
tone, and we could clarify that. So
yes,
go back
yes.
to what you were saying, and then I'll
Well,
say mine from there.
having done therapy for so many years, I have all these funny, laughable, humorous theories of therapy. One of them is that really what it's all about is that the therapist is somebody who keeps the client there for a whole 50 minutes. Whereas alone, that can never happen, because usually we do this sort of work on ourselves when we feel bad, and the minute we feel better, we stop and do something else. And I often notice that in my focusing partnerships, that we've agreed on 25 minutes for me, And I may start with some bad feeling or terrible shape or quandary, and then I get to where I'm okay. And then I know that left to myself, I would go to work now. I'd go back to the computer. I would do something. I would get up. And then I find to my sort of half dismay, half pleasure, that I have 12 minutes left.
Yes.
Well, you can't just sit
Yes.
12 minutes and do nothing. And besides, I know there's more. I just don't have to do more.
Right.
So then I'm always laughing and saying, well, this is actually my function all week as a therapist, is simply to have people stay when they no longer have to because they're so stuck. So with all that introduction, what I'm trying to say is, for me, I have a big investment in staying at the edge where something can come. I think all of therapy, to overgeneralize, depends on something coming. So I'm against sitting down and getting a picture of things in terms of the impossible. All you've got is what you've got, and what you've got is what you've got, and there is no answer and there's no way out. Because therapy is always work to get to the edge, and then we have to stay there for at least a few seconds. You know, and I know sometimes people that work with me, I've had to say, wait a second, you just said something helpful, now let me go in there and get it. Don't you think sometimes something you say is helpful? Because they just rattle on.
I remember an example you gave 30 years ago that I always quote about how when you buy a lottery ticket and you throw it away and you buy another one and then you win and you throw it away.
Yes.
That's sort of like not
Don't-
waiting to get
right,
the payoff for
so
something.
to me, the whole, the really exciting moment is precisely that moment when she says, well, now I don't have an answer. And if she hadn't laughed, if she simply had said, you know, I wish you could give, well, I don't know about the laugh, but she indicated that she had perspective on that. That I wouldn't do that to a person who thinks I'm the doctor and now she's laid it out and now what do I say? Then I would have to say more than that. But I still wouldn't go relational on it. But in this instance, it's a case of I wanted us to stay there. And I mean us.
Yes.
I wanted us to stay there.
So this gives me a chance to say a slightly different emphasis, which is that also, of course, for me, the edge of awareness is what's important.
Of course.
But as I see it, making something explicit that one hasn't thought yet
Right.
requires a great deal of permission and invitation, and is quite an interpersonally, very, very subtly interpersonal event.
I see.
And so when I pick up that something could be shameful
So we really read
to
that
say.
differently. I see that now. Yes.
then
Yes.
I'm very much wanting to help to make the
Right.
unsayable
I agree with
sayable.
you.
And unsayable can be many different
I
ways
agree with you.
unsayable,
I agree with you.
but usually interpersonally unsayable,
Yes,
that
yes,
from the person's whole
absolutely.
life
I
unsayable.
agree entirely with you. If I had sensed it that way,
Yes.
I would have done something.
Yes, yes,
Let me say it
yes.
back, though. I think I know you're saying that when you heard it, her smile about it was an embarrassed
smile, yes.
and you had felt it coming up to that point already, so that when she said it, it was a kind of a daring thing to do. She was taking a chance on actually articulating
Yes.
an interpersonal wish that she had.
Yes.
And I did not hear it that way. Let me say how I heard it. I heard it as the smile of a knowing person, a person who's been in therapy. I don't know anything about her. You do, I think. Is she
No,
a therapist?
no,
Is she?
no,
I had no
I-
idea who she was.
I don't.
But I could see in the way she said, oh, I wish you could give me the answer. I heard that as a form of words about, now I need an answer. I didn't hear it as a risky communication to the person who should give something. I didn't hear it that way. And then we can go and see what a neutral, sensible person, or we don't even,
No,
we don't need to.
We don't have to.
Because had I heard it that way, then it would have been the thing that I need to respond to.
That you would have wanted to lift that out.
Yes, certainly. But I don't want to lift it out if it isn't there in this primary sense of being there. Because in a secondary sense, everything's always there. So from a certain point of view, there's never a time, and that's what I thought Joan meant, that there's you can make everything be about you and me.
Well, everything, of course, always is about
Exactly,
you and me.
it is already. So
where-
why should we make that be the topic of the
Well,
attention?
You know, I think what we're saying is that the felt sense always has a dimension of you and me-ness.
Right, that's right.
And
That's
whether
right.
it's in the foreground or the background
Right, it's always there.
is always there,
Right.
and it being in the foreground or the background for the person in the moment is very important to you.
Right, exactly.
And it might be perceived
Exactly.
or
Exactly.
felt or
But it's not even the only thing. I think I said that at the time when we were discussing it. I didn't know anything about her. If I'd had even 1 hour with her previous, and this was her second interview, and in the first interview she told me something about never getting any help or never getting any response or anything at all, or even wishing that, whoever she was talking about, if I had anything like that, to think this is a moment in which we have between us a thing you identify as a problem, then I might bring it up even if she hadn't thought it. I would say, oh, is this a moment when it's hard to stand that you're asking for something? I didn't feel it that way, but had I known, so there are really two things. One is what you said. If it's focally here, then I have to respond to it. But also, if I happen to know that it duplicates what she said last week, even though she's not now thinking that, I might then still, I might not bring it up,
yes.
but I would respond so as to make it happen the way it should have happened in the past. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So if she'd said the week before, I can't trust anybody with my needs because I'm so sure that they can't be responded to.
Yes.
And she now
Then-
said, I need somebody to give me an answer.
Yes.
I might have said something. I wouldn't have referred to last week,
Yes.
but I would have said,
Say that
you
sentence.
really need something now.
Yes.
And you're feeling the need and you're saying so or something. I would have wanted to complete
Yes.
the
Say
thing that couldn't
yes.
happen.
Yes. Say that sentence again, because I think that
That's
is such an important
got us together.
part. Yes. And also, I just want to underline, that was one of the most important points, I think, that you made in the experiential interaction, old article that I
Yes.
always love.
Yes,
And so let's mark
Yeah.
that again, that,
Yes.
that something needs to be completed.
yes. And I
And-
wouldn't make it a topic of, I mean, I wouldn't analyze. I wouldn't say, oh, this is just like what you said last
Right.
week. I might under some circumstances, but most often I would just want it to come out right
That you
in
want it to
relation to
come
what
out
never comes out for her.
right.
So if she said, I have trouble saying what I need, then I would want this to be a successful, good feeling, responded to time when she did actually say what she needs. And, we can have 20 examples. Let's say she says, what else? Think of something else that it might be so we can complete the completion. Or she might have said, whenever I used to say that I needed something, I would get attacked, or I would get criticized, or I would get told I don't need it. But I would make sure that that didn't happen now.
That you're keeping in
Right.
mind the important role of the letter getting to you even when it has no stamp and the wrong address, and
Yeah.
it says all the wrong things in a language that nobody
Yes,
understands.
I want
You
to try.
want to get the letter
That's right.
and complete
Absolutely.
that
Absolutely.
that interaction, that
Which means even
communication.
if I don't understand, still I know enough to receive whatever it is.
Yes.
And that, of course, in a general way, I did do that.
Yes.
I said, oh, it would be a nice thing if I could.
Yes, yes. I think we're making some very important points that I have a sense need to be summed up in a way that I can't quite sum up right at the moment. But maybe at another time we could go back to them. Something about the in there and what one chooses to lift out and what one brings to the interaction is part of it.
Oh,
We're
yes,
always
that's
part
right.
of it.
It's very
It's not-
important, right, right.
Yeah,
In
it's
the
not
present,
like the patient is out there that we're listening to.
or that it's
We're always
right.
part of it.
I agree.
And
I agree. And it's also not arbitrary what we pick out.
yes, it's not arbitrary.
It's not how you meant it when you said me, you said, quote, me being me, you would pick out something relational. That can be interpreted as if it were arbitrary. And it's not meant
No,
to be
it's
arbitrary.
not at all
I know that. I know that, but I will
arbitrary.
make that clear here.
Yes,
Is that it's we both agree that there is something there, and it's from the something that we lift out.
and we're not
And the
separate
moment, right?
from the. I mean, it's the same point
What
that
is
you were
there
making
is already us.
philosophically.
Yeah, it's already
right?
us.
Yes,
Exactly, it's the same point.
it's
It's
not
already
over
an
there.
interaction.
Right. It's
We're already in it before we.
and then who each of us is
Right.
is in is in is in
He's
there.
already in there. It's not an
Yes.
interpretation. It's not a concept put on it. It's not a selection that's arbitrary. We're already living it. And it's from already living it interactionally that we can feel what we might want to lift out.
Yes, let me say that back, 'cause
Okay.
that seems, we're already living it. It's a living that
Right.
the therapist and the client are doing together.
Yeah,
Of
absolutely.
those two unique people and how they go together in a very unique
How
way.
they are in interaction.
Right.
How they're living
How
as
they are
interaction.
living together.
Yeah, yes.
They're interbeing, as Thich Nhat Hanh
Right,
would say.
Right, and you live differently with different other people.
Yes, yes, you live differently with each
Right.
other person.
Right.
Your living is different.
Right. It's not somebody over there and you're sitting over here selecting various aspects to work on.
Exactly.
It's already an interaction.
That's right.
And then the concepts or the words that we use need to bring the feel of the interaction along.
Yes.
I'm picking up your hint that we can connect the philosophical
Yes,
part with
yes,
the practice
yes,
part,
yes,
which you did so
exactly.
well there. It's like, it's exactly right. So if you take the words that we're saying and you cut them away from the sense of living interaction that we're speaking from, then they become arbitrary and stupid, sort of like. Well, as a relational therapist, so she emphasizes relations. And this guy's are focusing, so we're talking about the edge. And it's not very interesting. It's only interesting if you take the experience, the living, the concrete being with you, and those words. Then the words aren't just this concept. They pull out from the living.
And then each person that watches this videotape is
Is
going
doing
to
it
bring
too.
their own living
Sure,
to it.
Sure.
And-
And please bring your living to it. Don't just interpret it. I mean, don't just stick your concepts on it. Then you'll only find what you already know. Or something wrong.
I like that.
Yeah, good.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit more about philosophy.
Oh, I only wanted to add
Yes.
something. I wanted to say, for example, if we start out by saying the philosophy is about theory,
Yes.
which wouldn't be wrong. because philosophy is about concepts and examining what is involved in theory and so forth. But then I would say, but wait, because we would first have to understand what is theory. And different philosophers might be talking about very different things, so that what you thought was theory is only one particular point of view and one particular way of getting at it. And so when you say what is theory, most people would assume that we all agree that we can all recognize it. You know, like if we say, you know, and the same thing is true with like what is liberty. There isn't really one thing that's called liberty, and it's in Philadelphia. It's like, you see what I mean?
Yes.
What you think you're examining is already, it's already finished by the time you say, well, we all know what we mean now, let me tell you what I think about it. And so what is theory is not a single question.
So there might be theory that I wouldn't recognize as theory when I
Right,
say,
or by the time the person got through analyzing, you would see, oh, that could be theory too.
yes,
Right?
yes.
And then, of course, what is theory? Look at the word is, and the whole situation gets worse or better depending on whether you like big open questions. Because what is theory? Well, what is? Right? I mean, is theory is something that just exists out there?
Right,
In
there
space
can't
by
be
itself,
a
you know?
theory without a person theorizing.
Well, that's what I was going to say. And then the
Yes.
word what is already, who's asking that, and what is a question, and what does it mean to say what, and what would count for an answer to such a question. And so then you
I
you
love
realize
all
that
those
all
questions.
the big words are like that. And so it can look as if it's bound to be arbitrary, and you can't even start. And that's a good understanding of what philosophy is, given that we don't have is straight, and we certainly don't have philosophy straight. I mean, one thing you can depend upon philosophers arguing about is what philosophy is. So, and what arguing is, right? And what philosophers and other people are. And so once you have that level, and you realize that for some few thousands of years, some peculiar specialists have been trying to talk about how one can talk about something and what about could possibly mean.
Yes.
And whether
Yes.
about isn't already the end of the thing rather than the beginning, because about would seem to mean that something's by itself over there, and we're over here talking about it, right? Once you see that there is such a space even, and
Yes.
if you're not familiar with that kind of philosophical level, then you might get dizzy, and that would be fine if it's new to you.
Many people
But the exciting thing is
yes.
to realize that, oh, you can really think about something like that. You can think about and what thinking is, right? And then I'm, of course, in favor of doing that, and then turning and taking yourself with you, so that you don't only have the abstract questions the way I just said them, but you're not asking what a person is without realizing that you're one sitting there.
and about
So you have
that
at
you're
least
an
one person
aboutness.
available, right, and you have one about available, and you have really everything almost available
have
in
an
your own
is.
laboratory. There's some things you don't have available, like, but so I'm not saying everything is there, but it would be, from my point of view, terribly boring to talk about what a person is without checking with the one specimen that you have directly available, and then all the other people that you're relationally living with. And okay, I've said it. Thank you.